Hey guys, what's up? This is B coming to you from G&A today. So I've got my Mossberg International 715T, and it's what I wanted to show you how to do today is how to take this rifle down. Now there are already a lot of good videos on YouTube about this, but I'm going to be putting out some comparison videos on this, and in those comparisons I want to refer back to this, and so I kind of want to just have a standalone video for this takedown. So there are going to be 4 basic tools that you need to be able to do this. You're going to need a relatively small Phillip head, which is going to be the main thing. You're going to need a 4mm hex head bit. You're going to need a punch to punch out the pins that hold the trigger mechanism, the trigger group, all into the receiver. And you also need some kind of a little hook. I'm just using the Allen wrench to be able to lift the spring up whenever we're putting the bolt back in. I use this little tool set right here. And I know this is a cheap tool set, and I understand totally the value of high quality tools, but this thing is so cheap that if anything breaks, I can just replace it very, very easily. This is about $7 or $8 at Walmart, and the reason I like this tool set so much is it has so many different bits. I've used this thing over and over again, and so far even putting a fair amount of torque on, not a whole lot, but I've not broken the screwdriver or any of these bits or anything, so I definitely like this little set. Okay, so there are 13 screws that are going to have to come out, and I know that mine's this model that has the shorter handguard and has the flash hider on it. There's the other main model. There's all kinds of variations, but the other main model is where it has the handguard kind of like a dissipator that comes all the way out to nearly to the end of the muzzle, and that does not have a flash hider. And there'll be some minor differences, but for the most part, you'll be able to figure it out. So there are 13 screws that have to come out. There's this one right here that's going to release the this faux receiver extension. So that one's got to come out. Then you have, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Those are down into that hole pretty deep. It's kind of hard to see, but there's 2 there and 2 there, and then this little screw on this little mag release is a smaller screw. So this one obviously and this one are different sizes, but then the rest of these, the other 11, are all the same size. Okay, one thing that I want to warn you about at the very beginning of this video is there's a spring in this that you have to be careful of. As I watched a couple videos and read a couple forum posts on this, I did not know about this. I did not know that this could be a potential problem, and so I just tackled it, bent this spring, then went and looked and then realized that there are lots and lots of people that do the same thing, but in the few little videos that I saw, it was not mentioned. So I want to make sure and mention that there's the spring that pushes the bolt forward. It can bend very easily, and it did it to me before I knew what was happening, and so I want to give you that warning now, and I'll show you more about that as we get into this. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take out those 13 screws that I told you about. So that one that holds the faux receiver extension is kind of a bolt and screw that's screwed into it. And I suggest some kind of a place to keep all that together where you won't lose it. Go ahead and remove my red dot here. I'm going to go ahead and remove the screw for this little mag release. Take this off. See, and it's a lot smaller screw. Then, like I said, the other 11 are going to be the exact same size, so it doesn't matter if you get those mixed up. Those are all the exact same. Okay, and this is one of those times if you have a magnetic bit, it would definitely be useful here to be able to grab all these. I don't have a magnetic bit, so I'm just going to try to pull all these out. In fact, I'm just going to dump it over. So that should be my 11 screws right there. Again, I'm going to throw them all in there, keep them all together. At this point, this will pull straight off. Alright, and so now there's this 4mm hex head bolt right here and one right here that's holding the receiver onto this left hand side. So now using that hex head, I'm going to take those two bolts out. They don't have to come all the way out. You can just back them out far enough that you'll be able to see that it'll come loose from the receiver and you don't have to take them all the way. And that pulls straight up out of there. And you can see those two bolts right there. And then this mag piece right here, you can pull that out or leave it in, whatever. But okay, from here, if we want to take the trigger group loose from the receiver, there's two pins we have to drive out. There's this pin and this pin right here. And that's where we're going to use that punch, is to knock those two out. That's all that's holding this trigger group into the receiver here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a block of wood here, take another little block, and just set these up where I'm not going to get this scratched. And just drive these pins. And I'm going to be driving them from right to left, pushing them out this direction. Okay, and on this pin there's just a tiny little bit of knurling on it. And the pin sits like this in the receiver with the knurling on the right hand side, and there's a taper on the end of it that's on the left hand side of the receiver. Okay, I've tried to push this pin out a whole bunch of times and I cannot get it to go the rest of the way there, so anyways, it's far enough out that my trigger group is released now, so that's good enough. So what you're going to have to do is pull the bolt back, and here's where you need to start being careful, because the spring right in here is what can bend. So what I would suggest doing is just laying this down flat on the table, and then pull your bolt back, and then your trigger group will just come straight up and out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reach back to the back of the receiver here. I'm going to use my thumb and just pull the bolt back, and then my trigger group should pull just straight out of there. Now this spring right down in here is the one that I bent, and I'm going to be rolling in some other video of when that happened, and I'll show you that. But that is the spring right there that you need to be careful of. Okay, so you have your bolt stop, kind of a buffer here. It's just a kind of a plastic rubber piece. It just sits down in there, nothing's holding it in, so that's going to come straight out. So hang on to that. Now to get the bolt out of here, it takes a little bit of effort. Okay, so once you get the bolt brought down just a little bit, push down that way, then your bolt release. Your charging handle will pull loose real easy. Now right here, it's going to take a little bit to get the bolt pushed up and out of the little groove in there, and there it goes. So it takes just a little bit, but really pay attention to that spring right there, but especially when you're putting it in. Right here, you might be able to tweak it a little bit, but when you're putting it back in, it's whenever it can really start causing problems. Alright, so once you pull that loose, you have your bolt carrier here. You have this, which I think is officially called the operating slide spring. And then here's the little guide rod. Okay, once you get to this point, really, you've got it taken down about as far as you can take it. There's nothing left inside of there. We just have the receiver, just a stripped bare receiver, and there's your chamber into the barrel, so we've got it down to nothing there. And you should be able to get all the cleaning you need to do at that point. So even though it is kind of difficult to get tore down, you can really get this thing down to very bare bones, so you can get this thing cleaned really well. Okay, so let's put this back in, and again, I'm just giving you plenty of warning here because I don't want you to do the same thing I did. We're going to go ahead and slide the spring the back side of the bolt here, of the bolt carrier. Slide the guide rod into the spring. Now the guide rod, the collared part of this guide rod is going to fit up into, there's a hole you'll be able to see right there, and the guide rod is going to go into that. So I'm going to go ahead and slide that right in there. Alright, right here is where you'll see that it's wanting to start to bend right there out of place. So that's where a little hook comes in handy. You could even use a hanger or something. You need something to get down underneath that spring to bring it up just a little bit so that you're not going to start bending it. Alright, and so with this hook, I'm putting constant pressure pulling up so that it's keeping it from wanting to go down to bend, to bind up. So as I'm pulling that up, I'm going to be pushing the bolt back. As I'm bringing this up, pushing the bolt back, then you'll see your bolt will kind of start to fall down into place. Alright, so now you can see as I was bringing up pressure on the spring, pushing back, I was able to drop it in. My spring's in good shape now. So I need to get my charging handle back in. So what I'm going to do is just pick this up just a tiny little bit. Just enough to get my charging handle in. It'll slide in, then you can push this back down on top of that. Okay, next I need to get my trigger group put back in. Okay, and just in a second, whenever we're going to be putting the trigger group back in on top of the bolt here, you kind of have to wiggle this trigger group around, and it's what you're trying to accomplish is here on the trigger group, there's this piece that comes up and this little tab that's bent over. It's what's happening is you're trying to get that little bent tab to ride into this groove right here on the bolt. So you're trying to get that to happen right there. Need that little tab riding in that groove on the bolt. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take this little buffer and set it back in here. And how that's going to sit in there is it's going to sit just like this, where this little notch makes room for the pin to go across there. Sits in there just like that. Okay, now with that in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the bolt back with the charging handle, and when you do that, push down on this, because when you start bringing this back, it could start kind of popping up and get out of place. So push pressure down on the bolt like this as you bring it back. Then once it gets back far enough, then that guide rod is going to keep it from doing that. But in the first few little centimeters of travel here, it could start to want to pop up. So make sure you hold that, bring it all the way back. Make sure that your buffer's staying in place here. And I'm going to take my trigger group here. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, what you're being careful of here is that, or what you're trying to happen is to get that little tab on the trigger group lined up with that little slot on the bolt. And from there, I can tell that we've got it in place because I can see that that hole is lined up all the way through there. And I know that's good. I can't see through there because that pin's stuck, but that should have that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and drop my pins back in now. So again, as I put this back in from left to right, the knurling is going to go in first. And then that should have it. Got my pins back in there. Check function on my bolt here. Make sure I can bring it back, push it in to hold it, lift it up. Okay, good. Everything feels pretty good on that now. So from here, now all I have left to do is just to put it back into its clamshell. Alright, so first thing is I'm going to put it back on the left hand side here so I can go ahead and put these two hex head bolts back into the receiver. Of course, making sure I get that in place right there. Okay, you'll feel it be able to fall down in place, and you'll see that the hole on the receiver will line up with that bolt there. Alright, so we got those two bolts put back in. Now it's just putting all the plastic back together here. So one word of caution is from here, these other 13 screws that we're about to put back in, well, I guess except for the one that holds the buttstock on, but the rest of them is going to be screwing into polymer. So you're screwing a metal screw into polymer or plastic. So whenever you tighten the rest of these up, don't over tighten them, because you can strip them, and if you strip them, that screw's worthless unless you tap it with the bigger one. But just be careful. There's no reason to over tighten anymore, because really all the force is taken in what's done right here. All right, so I put that shell back on, and I'm trying to get my mag release here back in order, and it kind of takes a little wiggling around to get it to want to get up into that little spot there. There we go. So you'll see it'll come up and see nearly exactly flush with the outside of the shell there. Alright, so here's the little mag release, and then the little screw. Set that back in place. It'll key right back into place there. Now on this one, aside from just over tightening into polymer, if you over tighten this, it'll make it where these try to clamp down, and you won't be able to really bring it down very far. So make sure you don't do that, because you want to be able to release the mag. So I kind of tighten it down, then bring it back just a little bit, so that this can go ahead and spin freely there. All right, so now it's a matter of just putting these 11 screws back in, and then we'll put our buttstock on after that. Alright, that's got all those in. All I have left to do now is put my buttstock back on and put the bolt in. Okay, there you go. Let's check function here. Make sure everything feels good. And that should have it. That's how you take down, reassemble a Mossberg 715T. I hope that helps. And again, this is B coming to you from GNA. Thanks for watching today. Oh, you dummy. You dummy! Dumb!